There is a peculiar serenity to camping in the pocket dimension where I housed the 100 Acre Woods. One would think an eldritch librarian has no business roasting marshmallows beneath the paperbark trees of a children's storybook. But after several eternities in the library, even I require a change of atmosphere. The air is quiet, the stars are dimly illustrated, and the fire crackles with the reassuring sound of cellulose surrendering to flame. At my side, of course, is Chestopher, my intern, my mimic, my walking paradox of golden retriever loyalty and singularity-grade digestion. He has, in the last 5 minutes, swallowed 2 of the firewood logs, half my folding chair, and just now, Sleepnora's marshmallow stick, which reappeared several miles away, skewering a farmer's scarecrow like some culinary omen. He wags his mimic lid, perfectly pleased, as though entropy were a game of fetch. Now you may be wondering why I tolerate this. Why, after watching him gulp down my camp provisions like a Labrador inhaling slippers, I do not simply eject him into a lesser dimension and list black hole in a box under the lost and found. The answer, dear listener, is that I am forgiving. At first, for I too have known the call of appetite. When one faces a croissant of sufficient magnitude, a single mouth is insufficient. Auxiliary mandibles sprout, auxiliary eyes focus, and the pastry is honored in its proper plurality. This, incidentally, is why mortals depict us with such an excess of mouths and eyes. They imagine horror when the truth is hunger and reverence. It is not a matter of intimidation, it is etiquette to regard every flake of buttered pastry with the multitude of eyes it deserves, and to consume it with the mandibles proportionate to its artistry. Multiplicity is not monstrousness, it is respect for the culinary arts, and for art in general. So when Chestopher consumed my breakfast this morning with several mouths wide open, I almost respected him. Almost. Unfortunately, appetite never stops at croissants. It scales, it metastasizes, it escalates. And so, by this campfire, I must recount the litany of today's disasters, each one beginning with Chestopher's eager maw, and ending with some corner of the multiverse filing complaints in languages that shouldn't exist. First my croissant, then my rations for the campfire, then inevitably Kanga's entire house, swallowed in one cheerful gulp as if the concept of home were a bedtime snack. From there, the incidents grew stranger, larger, more reality problematic, until, dear listener, he made a lunge for something no mimic should ever taste. Something that keeps existence humming in fragile, oblivious slumber. Azathoth's flutists. But let us not rush ahead. No. Let us move step by step, crumb by crumb, through the banquet of incompetence that has been my day, lest you think the apocalypse arrived suddenly. It did not. It arrived wagging its mimic lid, burping ink, and begging for head scratches. There is, believe it or not, a reason I saved the 100 Acre Woods. And no, it wasn't for something as painfully human as glory. I'm billions of years old. What do you take me for? It was, to put it quite simply, because the universe erased places like this first. Too gentle, too quiet. The cosmos prefers screaming pantheons and volcanic bureaucracy. Storybooks it devours without even noticing. So I stitched this one back and gave the 100 Acre Woods its own shelf in my library. It is perhaps my one sentimental indulgence. The other eldritch gods didn't quite understand it, but they also didn't meddle in my affairs, which was good enough for me. My mother, the black goat of the woods, who insists head librarian looks dignified on a business card, once told me I had finally birthed a consciousness after all these eons. Pun intended, naturally. Maternal praise has always arrived gift-wrapped in insult. Still, I told myself this pocket forest could be my retirement plan. A place of infinite pastries and naps beneath trees that do not demand quarterly reports from young Azathoth. I allowed myself the smallest taste of peace, and naturally, just as I was savoring that thought, Chestopher ate Kanga's house. I should have detected those polite nibbles upending the sanctity of the fabled woodlands. But the full-throated enthusiasm of a golden retriever discovering upholstery is hard to hear over the sound of my own lectures. My greatest flaw, monologues so loud they drown out disaster. And so I, a being of cosmic horror, stared in actual horror as honey poured down Chestopher's mandibles in golden gallons. Eeyore's hut dangled from the corner of his mimic maw like a squeaky toy. He wagged, proud, as though entropy itself were a fetch toy delivered for his delight. I waved an accusatory tentacle with the kind of glare that has reduced minor pantheons to paperwork. Chestopher! Bad, very bad. Drop it this instant, he barked, an unholy sound halfway between a slammed filing cabinet and a squeaky accordion, and shook the hut until its roof squealed. Don't you dare shake it, I snapped, leveling my croissant stick like a holy relic. Regurgitate everything now, or I'll replace you with the shredder in human resources. He slowly creaked and flapped his lid at me, as if questioning what he'd just heard. Not the mechanical shredder, I clarified. The one Madeline keeps. The one that forces interns to recite apologies while they're turned into confetti. You're lucky she isn't here to see this. I stopped myself from finishing the absurdity behind that thought. Because of course, if Madeline were here, she wouldn't be scolding Chestopher. She'd be scolding me for bringing a mimic into the woods at all. For risking entropy acceleration in a stitched-on domain I'd sworn to keep pristine. For thinking, in some sentimental lapse, what harm could camping do? The same foolish instinct mortals have when they leash up a Labrador and take it to the park. Only in my case, man's best friend isn't a panting dog. It's a furniture-shaped stomach with a singularity for a throat. A companion that fetches galaxies instead of sticks, and deposits them wherever the fabric of reality is weakest. That was the logic that betrayed me. If humans get campfires and canines, surely an elder god may roast a croissant beside his mimic. Chestopher wagged again, oblivious to my spiraling self-recrimination. I sighed and lowered the croissant stick. Well, forget Madeline. She'd reduce me to confetti long before she gave you a reprimand. He burped happily, releasing a honey jar that shattered at my feet. Well, I'm glad at least one of us is enjoying himself, I said, shaking off the droplets. I get honey stains. You get plausible deniability. Chestopher wagged indifferently, bathed in his own drool. He shifted up to me next, showing me the spoils of adventure. He had Kanga's paunch wedged halfway down his gullet and gallons of honey dripping from his mandibles. He gave the muffled woof noise of a retriever insisting it has done nothing wrong while sitting in the smoking crater of your sofa. And naturally, that was the moment my foam burst. For a fleeting instant I thought it might be good news. Perhaps mortals had finally released their mythical GTA 6. But no, it was worse. Flashing across my void screen were two names, Pooh and Sleepnora. Together, a partnership of suspicion if ever there was one. I looked at Chestopher and knew this would not end well. Because in case you've forgotten, dear reader, his esophagus is not ordinary. When mortals say down the hatch, they mean it metaphorically. Chestopher means it literally. A hatch into a black hole, with a wormhole spitting the debris into someone else's backyard. I accepted the conference call. I I started, trying to sound pleasant. If it isn't my favorite storybook refugees. How fares Camelot? Still polishing swords to hide the rasp? Sleepnora's voice drifted through first, drowsy but insistent.
Master Cthulhu? Did something happen to the 100 Acre Woods?
Of course she would notice. It was her childhood neighborhood after all. Sleepnora may be a ghostly necromancer intern now, but once upon a time she was Rue. Yes, that Rue. The pouch-sized kangaroo with an alarming talent for climbing furniture. You can imagine my paperwork nightmare when she reincarnated and insisted on bringing her mother's house with her in spectral memory. Ghosts are notoriously territorial, and interns doubly so. Well, I'm camping in it, I said, turning my croissant over the fire while draping a tentacle across Chestopher to silence the racket. He'd been chewing like a washing machine trying to digest a boulder. Charming little cottages, very restful. Why'd you ask?
Because my mom's front door just dropped out of the sky and nearly landed on our campfire.
Sleepnora said, her words stretching like she hadn't quite woken up, but her aim was perfect. I kept my voice steady. That would be architectural migration. Happens in pocket dimensions. I kept my tone as even as the firelight, though I was glad they couldn't see me. My tentacles curl whenever I lie, and this was a full spiral. Sleepnora's voice drifted through, amused.
Oh, pocket migration. Is that in the handbook? Because my pocket just caught a picture frame of me and my mom. Funny coincidence.
Indeed, I said, turning my croissant like a fine cigar. Coincidence is the skeleton key of reality. Entire civilizations run on it. I assure you, it's perfectly natural. Pooh spoke next, his voice calm as butter cooling in a dish.
Well, I've seen many things fall from the sky in my life. Sometimes even myself, but rarely with hinges. Kanga's door fell beside us. Perfectly rectangular, perfectly familiar. One might say, a coincidence with excellent carpentry.
Exactly so, I said, seizing the lifeline. Atmospheric timber happens all the time. Who knows what Hades has done to Camelot? Entirely possible the local climate is generating door-shaped precipitation. Sleepnora gave a drowsy laugh.
Well, my bed just arrived too. Sheets tucked in, pillow included. It's like the sky is redecorating me. I'll keep watch for a matching dresser.
And the welcome mat.
Pooh added, pleasant as ever.
Do coincidences usually arrive with embroidery? This one says, please wipe your paws. Very specific meteorology.
Dimensions shift like bad landlords, I replied briskly. Suddenly, always at dinner time. You wouldn't understand.
Oh, I wouldn't.
Pooh asked, feigning injury, though his tone was light as a joke shared over tea.
Sleepnora, did you hear that? Am I just a silly old bear to him?
I tried to sound lofty, but Sleepnora's giggle in the background reminded me I was outnumbered.
Hardly silly. Merely gravitationally naive, which is forgivable. Most species fail the course.
Hardly, I said, looping a tentacle around Chestopher's lid, just as he lunged for another support beam. You are not silly. You are tenacious, infuriatingly observant, and capable of dismantling an argument with fewer words than most gods use to order breakfast, which is far worse. At least silly creatures can be ignored. You, unfortunately, cannot. But even so, I yanked Chestopher back with a grunt. All of this is nothing more than cosmic coincidence. Timber falls, books drift, honey jars migrate. Entirely natural phenomena. stitched together in a pattern that only appears deliberate when in fact it is pure chance. There was a contemplative pause, the kind Pooh uses like punctuation.
You know what? I think I get it now. So what you really mean to say is God's just work in mysterious ways, and coincidence is a part of the package. And who are we to question objects that fall from the sky, familiar or not?
My croissant nearly plunged into the fire. Don't you dare quote that drivel at me. That phrase is the theological equivalent of a shrug. It's what lazy deities say when they've run out of excuses but still want to sound profound. A resignation slip with incense. I am not mysterious. I am meticulously documented. Pooh went on as if reading from a script.
Fascinating. So you're suggesting it's not mysterious design, then? Well, you're just a beacon of knowledge, Master Cthulhu. I should reject what I see and simply listen to you from now on.
I squinted at the communicator, narrowing 40 eyes at once. That was sarcasm. Don't think I didn't hear the italics in your voice.
Was it?
Pooh said mild as honey. Don't play coy. Sarcasm echoes differently across dimensions. It tastes like tin. I could lick it off the air. I probably sounded rushed. Dear reader. But in my defense, I was wrestling Chestopher away from my shoulder. His drool was accelerating into rivulets, and I briefly considered calling Sisyphus to babysit him. Sisyphus, at least, is good with repetitive, hopeless tasks. Chestopher, of course, chose that moment to let out a deep, affectionate burble, shaking ink and drool across my face like a malfunctioning sprinkler. I wiped my mandibles with grave dignity. Pooh hummed again, polite and deliberate.
And yet it all seems to happen around you. The croissants, the pens, the doors, the houses. If coincidence is honest, then perhaps you are simply very unlucky.
Unlucky? At this point, dear reader, all I could do was raise the thinly veiled flag of confusion while regaining composure. Honey sprayed further as Chestopher nuzzled my cheek, mistaking my fury for endearment. I am not unlucky. I am besieged. There is a difference. Sleepnora's laugh rang through, drowsy but delighted.
Besieged by coincidences. That still sounds an awful lot like a god who works in mysterious ways.
Don't, I said, jerking a half-swallowed chair from Chestopher's maw. Don't mistake me for Yahweh with his smoke screens of mystery. I do not thrive on unanswered questions. I traffic in facts. Irritating, ugly, relentless facts. Stars collapse for reasons. Furniture falls for reasons. And if you insist the world is unknowable, well, then you've simply not been paying attention. Everything is pure coincidence. Entirely natural. Pooh hummed as if agreeing, then twisted the knife with velvet courtesy.
Natural, like houses going for evening walks, curtains, furniture and all. Very thorough naturalism.
Yes, I barked, dragging out a honey jar Chestopher had half swallowed. Exactly that. Now stop trying to corner me with cliches. Pooh was unflappable.
I wouldn't call it a corner, Master Cthulhu. More of a gentle suggestion that your coincidences appear remarkably consistent.
Sleepnora giggled, soft and playful.
Pattern recognition. It's a silly habit mortals have. We connect dots even when the dots are entire houses.
Chestopher burped. Owl's entire library followed into his abyssal gut. The sky cracked, raining books like a deranged academic piñata. Sleepnora caught one without opening her eyes.
Oh, Owl's handwriting. Unless Timber is literate now?
Airborne pamphlets, I explained crisply, smoothing my robes. A natural side effect of dimensional drafts. And frankly, It's colonial to assume owls lack literacy. Perfectly ordinary. I could feel one auxiliary eye twitch. Pooh turned a page with patient ceremony.
Curious coincidence. This one has Owl's nameplate and his address.
A forgery, I snapped. Owl is a very common surname in woodland trades. Sleepnora leaned closer to Pooh's speaker, voice drifting like a dream.
And this recipe? Pickled beetles? Signed owl-esque? Coincidental cuisine?
Yes, I said flatly. A prank genre, very common. Pooh closed the book gently.
So to summarize, these are not Owl's books. They only look like Owl's books, sound like Owl's books, and contain Owl's handwriting, signatures, and recipes. And the rubble of Sleepnora's childhood home is not her home, merely a stunning replica.
Precisely, I said triumphant. You're beginning to understand the nature of coincidence. Sleepnora yawned, dreamy.
Except another book just fell on me. It's titled The Complete Works of Owl That Are Definitely Not a Bundle of Coincidences, with a paw print.
I straightened, croissant stick raised like a gavel. A rainstorm of coincidences, I declared, adjourned as if the case were closed. Then came the splat of honey across their camp. Pooh studied it with dreadful patience.
If more of my house that is not my house falls on us, I will begin to suspect.
True, it's raining honey right now, and there's definitely not a certain eldritch god and a certain hungry mimic that could make this happen.
Sleepnora teased, peeling gold from her sleeve. Atmospheric honey storms, I lied unconvincingly. Rare but natural. Could be a Camelot thing. A fence post, a rug, then a bed with sheets still tucked in. Their camp resembled a second-hand shop for displaced childhoods. Pooh finally relented and said,
All right, Master Cthulhu. We will let you know if the rest of our neighborhood arrives like an angry Amazon package.
Sleepnora chimed in, twisting a metaphorical knife my way.
Or I'll just tell Madeline.
No. My eyes flared open, then softer. No need to bother her. Perfectly quiet evening here. Nothing to report. Chestopher wagged, proud of himself. A porch beam sticking from his maw like a toothpick.
Say hi to Chestopher for me.
Sleepnora beamed, her voice warm through the crackle of the line. Well, I started masking my emotions with smoke from the fire. I am proud of you, you know. Wandering into Camelot, finding your friends, resisting entropy without so much as a library card. Braver than most gods I've had to work with. There was a pause. Sleepnora's breathing slowed, and Pooh hummed as though weighing honey by the ounce. But don't tell Madeline I said that, I added quickly, tugging Chestopher's many tongues away from the firewood. She'll start thinking I'm capable of sincerity.
We won't tell.
Pooh said at last, his tone calm and almost amused.
Your secret's safe with me, Master Cthulhu.
Sleepnora murmured, sing-song and dreamy, as though she were already half asleep. The line went dead, leaving only the fire's crackle, Chestopher wagging his lid, and the splinter of a porch beam caught in his teeth. The 100 Acre Woods exhaled, fire hissed, crickets resumed their small bureaucracy, and Chestopher sat beaming beside me, with the self-satisfaction of a golden retriever who has converted an heirloom sofa into modern art. Silence, yes, but not peace. Peace is an expense item the universe keeps promising to reimburse. I pinched ash from the browning croissant and took inventory. 1, Owl's library, vanished, will require a stern letter and possibly a tart to Olympus. 2. Kanga's door, now a meteor crater in Camelot. 3. Eeyore's hut, very much scattered to the winds of entropy, but I could just find natural wood in the area to rebuild. 4. Pooh's honeypot, reinterpreted as weather. In the morning, I would have to submit a restoration request, a routing charm, and 3 apology baskets, each charmed to taste like memory plus honey. The library keeps a whole shelf labeled Contrition Edible. I've emptied it before. I'll empty it again. Chestopher thumped his mimic lid against the ground. Boom, boom, boom. A percussion of guiltless joy. Sit, I commanded. Chestopher sat, or tried to. First, his mimic lid clamped shut on the grass like a chest being set down. Then his back half folded down a few feet away, as though his body hadn't agreed where to land. Finally, a third version of his weight plopped directly onto the first, overlapping with a shudder that made the meadow hum like a struck tuning fork. Close enough, I gave in, scratching the back of my head. 3 sits still equal 1 in cosmic arithmetic, I suppose. Anyway, Chestopher, we're going to have what mortals call a conversation, I started, while the mimic insisted on taking biting shots at my legs. This is where I speak in measured tones, and you pretend to understand because you love me. His tongue lolled from an auxiliary mandible. It tasted the night air, the ember scent, the butter evaporating off my croissant. It tasted the concept of boundaries, and found no calories in it whatsoever. You cannot keep swallowing everything you see, I continued, trying for patience and landing somewhere closer to litigation. The multiverse is not an infinite buffet. It is not fetch. Most of it is poison, cursed, or actively trying to kill you. What's next? Chestopher, the sun. Would you fetch me the sun like a tennis ball and expect a pat on the lid? Chestopher wagged, mandibles dripping honey, and looked around as if the sun might actually be available for retrieval. His tail thumped against the dirt with the steady rhythm of, I'll do it if you throw it. Don't look at me like that, I warned. You think I'm joking? Do you have any idea what happens if you eat the sun? Everything freezes. Empires collapse. We have to invent new candles. That's at minimum 3 committees worth of paperwork. He barked, a sound like 2 filing cabinets mating violently, and drooled on my croissant. And no, before you ask, the moon is not fair game either, I snapped, wiping ink from my mandible. That one's already spoken for. Wolves, poets, and several licensing boards would object. You'll cause a bidding war. Chestopher tilted his lid innocently, then tried to nose my croissant closer to his abyssal maw. Don't even think about it, I hissed, yanking it back. This is sacred. This is the one object between you and a short career in HR purgatory. Stick to bread rolls, Chestopher. Decorative hats. Maybe, a cursed amulet nobody wants. Not suns, not moons, not my croissants. He wagged harder, utterly missing the distinction between cosmic catastrophe and treat time. I am going to state categories, and you are going to respond with the correct behavior. I cleared my throat in the universal tone of, a quiz is happening. Category number 1, acceptable snacks, bread rolls, paper clips, unloved memos, the occasional hat, decorative, not religious, a pen if and only if its owner deserves it. Also, anything Zeus may hold near and dear to him is fair game. He leaned forward, enraptured. Category number 2, these are the absolute no-nos. Homes, gods unless provoked, interns, ritual scrolls, the moon, even the small ones, memories that aren't yours. Anything labeled, do not eat, in a language you can read, or a language you can nearly read, and to be exquisitely clear, anything that hums reality to sleep. He wagged his tongues asynchronously, like shutters testing the wind, and I briefly felt this was what Chestopher looked like when thinking. And Category 3, ambiguous cases. Movie directors who insist on live-action remakes, technically edible, but they leave a bitter aftertaste. Daylight savings time. Chew carefully. It resets in your stomach twice a year. Middle managers named young Azathoth. While tempting, do not touch. I work for one, and HR is already watching me like a hawk. These are not clear-cut snacks, Chestopher. These are litigation waiting to happen. If you're unsure, consult me. If I'm unreachable, consult no one. Starve. He poured the dirt, tail doing happy metronome work. I could feel him trying to be good. The way water tries to be flat while the moon is busy yanking on it. Excellent, I said. We have established a framework. He lunged for my croissant. I yanked it back. What did we just talk about? This is sacred, and I'll repurpose you into a decorative lamp if you try that again. He produced the small, apologetic waff that dogs deploy when they've been caught with a mouthful of your shoe. Then, to demonstrate his commitment to growth, he turned and swallowed a pile of bonfire sticks instead. Better, but still no, I said calmly, reaching past the event horizon and retrieving, with effort, a slightly creased branch. It came out humming a hymn it had learned in transit. Spit it out. Do not eat the firewood. Chestopher wagged, lid flapping happily, and stared at the branch as if I'd just laid out a feast. His mandibles quivered with effort. For him, not eating something was the equivalent of a mortal holding their breath under lava. Good boy, I said at last, daring to mean it. He didn't understand the words, of course. He understood only that I was proud of him for not swallowing everything in sight, which, in his mind, was encouragement to keep trying bigger things. He wagged so hard his hinges clacked, then, heroically, turned away from the branch and put his entire head in the campfire. I dragged him out by the lid. Flame licked the ink of his gullet and came back older. Not the fire, I said, coughing. If you swallow the fire, I have to invent a replacement myth about warmth, and I'm behind on my deliverables. He opened his maw in a slow grin that was also a gravitational well. From somewhere deep inside, a chair I had not authorized slid past like a ship in fog, then reversed direction as if reconsidering its commitments. Chestopher, focus. We must discuss the consequences of your culinary outreach. But truth be told, dear listener, my mind was elsewhere. I looked out to the limits of where the void had gnawed at the 100 Acre Wood before I halted its advance. The juxtaposition was absurd and breathtaking. A storybook forest politely rolling out its meadows, then stopping mid-sentence against the infinite abyss. Trees that had been drawn with crayons now bent toward an edge where stars bled through. It was less a landscape than a stitch job, patched and preserved by my stubbornness. To Pooh and Sleepnora, perhaps all this would seem like a cosmic nuisance. But to me, there was something almost, dare I admit it, elegant in the absurdity. A mimic's appetite redistributing neighborhoods. A cosmic librarian treating a croissant on a stick as a solemn rite. The woods themselves, spared from the void, now threatened by the slobber of a creature I keep around for company. This was not prophecy. It was not order. And yet it meant more than either. And dare I admit it, I was perhaps enjoying myself. That is what the other eldritch gods never understood. They think meaning hides in solemnity, scrolls, prophecies, the occasional burning bush. They see absurdity as entropy. I see it as the only thing worth keeping. Because the joke, repeated long enough, becomes a kind of law. And if a law can keep a forest stitched to a library and a mimic that thinks itself a dog, then perhaps we've stumbled into a retirement plan worth protecting. I sighed and turned my croissant over the flame. I would, of course, have to fix all this, otherwise I would never hear the end of it. Reversal plan, I declared, as though saying it out loud might cow the laws of physics into cooperation. We begin with triangulation. Every object you eat emerges elsewhere. A door in Camelot, a honeypot in a field. Entirely inconvenient, entirely measurable. If we can predict where your stomach chooses to spit its prizes, then, Chestopher, perhaps, we can stop demolishing neighborhoods and start directing outcomes. I held up a slim, leather-bound book. The library maintains a white-hole almanac, charts of ejection patterns, incidence angles, even the poetry of loss. By aligning Owl's address plates to the honey-slick sheen of Kanga's door, we may... Hey, what are you? Chestopher, no, we do not taste the almanac. You see, this is where mortals misunderstand him. Chestopher does not only eat objects. His esophagus has the dietary ethics of a garbage disposal. He can eat concepts if they are carelessly pronounced. The sound of a word is as tangible to him as furniture. Say almanac in the wrong tone, and he takes it as an hors d'oeuvre. Sure enough, the moment I spoke it, he gulped the word right out of the air. Words are sticky, and once he has the meaning in his teeth, the associated artifact follows out of sheer courtesy. The book vanished after the word like a guest dragged into the kitchen after its hat. I pried it back with a tentacle. It returned damp, annotated by whatever commentary his singularity stomach had supplied in transit. Several footnotes now glowed with opinions no editor had ever held. Fine, I said, smoothing the soggy pages with as much dignity as one can muster, while wiping ink off one's mandibles. If triangulation is too ambitious, then we proceed by calibration. We feed you small control objects and record their destinations. Swallow politely, Chestopher, and Sleepnora will log where they land. If a thimble strikes her bedroll, you are banished to HR for a fortnight. If it lands on grass, you may lick a rock. He perked up, barking in mimic joy. Small things, I reminded him, producing a thimble from Owl's hobby drawer. Safe things. Nothing that sings in the key of apocalypse. Chestopher accepted the thimble with the solemn reverence of a penitent receiving communion. Gulp. Silence. Then a faint clang somewhere far away, like a pixie ringing for last call. My communicator flashed. Lantern singed, sparks everywhere. Miraculously, no fatalities. Calibrated, I announced, as though my auxiliary eyes weren't twitching. Next trial. A spoon. Down it went. A pause. Then my communicator reported impact sustained. A campsite narrowly avoided, dignity less so. Someone was very nearly impaled by cutlery. Data recorded. Excellent, I said briskly, logging the complaint under progress. Final test. A pebble. Chestopher swallowed with gusto. Silence stretched. Then my communicator chimed again. Not with coordinates this time, but with a confirmation signature. The pebble had been signed for by Pooh. Delivery accepted. The log read. Very round. Chestopher wagged, absurdly pleased with himself. I straightened, smoothing my robes with the unearned gravitas of a lecturer, insisting the syllabus is going exactly to plan. There, we build a reflux map. We chart safe zones. We install, quite literally, a moral compass in your stomach. The library calls it navigational calibration. I call it housebreaking. He burnt a compass. It spun madly, then pointed at my croissant. Absolutely not. I reprimanded. "You're doing a good job, but remember that remains sacred." I had almost finished assembling restitution baskets, Poohs with chamomile and an apology, Sleepnoras with dream tea and a frame that refuses to topple, Alice's with a lantern too stubborn to shatter, when Chestopher drifting. Drifted is the best I can manage. He doesn't walk. He simply angles his body like a cabinet deciding to topple, and somehow forward becomes inevitable. Each mandible stretched as if sniffing, though he owns no nose to justify the motion. His tongues fluttered, each panting in a different rhythm, chasing something I could not hear. "Stay," I said, "the way one tells a mountain to kindly remain upright." He froze, obedient for the span of 2 heartbeats. On the third, his ears lifted, not toward me, nor the fire, nor the woods themselves, but toward something hidden beneath them all. The night was still. Flame crackling, stars indifferent, the stitched sky holding firm. Yet Chestopher leaned, intent sharpening, as though only he could catch the faintest thread winding through the silence. "What do you hear?" I asked, quieter than I like to be. He couldn't tell me, of course, so he tried to eat it. "Hey," I snapped, coiling a tentacle around his lid. "We do not ingest vague auditory phenomena after 11. That's a rule. 2 rules, if you count courtesy." He stilled, trembling with that awful seriousness he gets when he's translating command into mission. His mandibles quivered as though they were tuning forks. It wasn't silence. The faint piping persisted, a rhythm like someone breathing through a straw. Chestopher shifted like a compass towards whatever signal he was picking up. "Oh, that," I said, realizing belatedly what held him. Yes, Azathoth's flutists. They keep the cosmos humming in its sleep. Background noise, the oldest track in existence. I've heard it since before your species invented soup. And believe me, the tune does not improve. You'll get used to it. Of course he wouldn't. No one does. Mortals hear that piping and feel awe. Mimics hear it and feel hunger. Even I, for all my practiced indifference, know what it means. If the piping falters, the sleeper stirs, and the story ends with no epilogue. But I wasn't about to tell Chestopher that. You don't wave a sign saying doom in front of a creature who treats warnings like chew toys. Better to feign boredom. But he didn't look bored. He looked keen on finding out whatever it was that was arresting his attention. His eyes glowed with the awful focus of a creature hearing not just music, but a command hidden inside it. "All right," I said, appealing for Chestopher's attention span, which was notoriously about as long as a fruit fly. "Clean up drill. Focus local." We walked the camp's edge while I coaxed objects back out of his memory before they slipped fully into the white hole's queue. A candlestick retracted like a guilty tongue. A sheaf of Owl's unsent letters tumbled out, sighing in resignation. A chunk of Rabbit's pantry returned. Every jar now labeled "Not for Chestopher" in 10 alphabets. Adorable. Futile. But adorable. Chestopher obeyed, but his ears never stopped twitching like antennas. Always towards the flutes. Always toward the sieve-threaded music I had long ago relegated to background noise. "Drop," I said, and he did. For a while, at least. He dropped a shoe, a doorknob, a bed leg, one very stubborn cushion, the concept of wallpaper, 3 spoons, and a small afternoon. The afternoon sat between us, looking lost until a breeze picked it up and put it where it belonged. "You can do this," I told him, feeling a surge of parental pride I did not authorize. "You can?" He bolted. Not far, not fast. Just a quiet trot toward the book drop clearing, where the library keeps its courier pods. Little metal commas nestled in the grass, each one capable of stitching a neat thread through vile distances and returning with overdue truths. Absolutely not, I said. Pods are for librarians and licensed disasters. He pretended to study a beetle. The beetle pretended to study him back. The beetle showed admirable composure. "Come back, Chestopher," I said, and patted my knee the way mortals do. I am not above it. He came. He leaned against my shin with the force of a small moon, and for a minute I allowed myself to believe the lesson had landed. We stood there together, the terrible and the terribly earnest, and listened to the pocket sky paint itself darker. Somewhere far beyond that stitched canvas of forest and stars, the faint music threaded again. Not melody, mechanism, a thin circular insistence, like a lullaby engineered by a bureaucracy that had forgotten who was sleeping. I felt my stomach interpret it as paperwork. Chestopher interpreted it as a whistle. His ears pricked, the new set, the overeager pair. Every tongue went still. His entire posture bent toward the sound the way flowers bend toward the sun. "Hey," I warned. "No, that's..." But he was already translating warning into invitation. Not a leap at the pods. A leap at the idea of pods. He swallowed distance, which is the most expensive thing one can swallow. I didn't catch him. There was nothing to catch. Space folded, and my vision unfolded. Every eldritch nerve I owned lit with the triangulation I had been trying to teach him. A line drawn cleanly from here to there, from croissants and cottages to the piping at the center. And there it was, the destination I had long since learned to ignore. The music I could tune out like elevator static after millennia, but which for him was a clarion call. "Chestopher," I said, to no one but the air, my voice a stone thrown into a tide that drowned it instantly. "Wherever that line goes, it is not for you." But my map did not lie. His trajectory cut through everything. Forests, stars, stitched dimensions, drawn in a straight, merciless line toward the piping at the center. I reached for him with all the extensions of myself. Tentacle, thought, presence, but there was nothing to grasp. He was gone before grasping was possible, swallowed by his own trajectory. The woods bent around the absence he left, grass bowing toward the hole where his weight had been. The fire guttered, pulled sideways, as if even flame wanted to follow, and beyond it all, the piping grew clearer. I had spent millennia ignoring it, the way one ignores the hum of blood in one's ears. Now it rose again into the foreground, each shrill note a needle in the fabric of existence. If it falters, the sleeper stirs. If the sleeper stirs, there will be no correction, no aftermath, no library to catalogue what was lost. I do not frighten easily, but Azathoth's name has always been my silence, and Chestopher was moving straight toward it. Chestopher's trot turned into a gallop, then into the kind of polite, inexorable charge only an intern with a purpose can manage. He wasn't hungry. No, I could read the tilt of his lid, the wag of his hinges. He was eager, desperate. The kind of desperate wag you only see when a creature wants one thing: recognition. "Chestopher," I warned, looping 3 tentacles into the dirt as an anchor. "Whatever it is you think you're doing, I assure you, it does not require applause." He ignored me. Of course he ignored me. Every creature ignores their supervisor at the exact moment it matters most. It's not rebellion, it's instinct. The evolutionary certainty that if a higher authority is looking away, that's the time to swallow a galaxy. And so he did it. He lunged into the clearing, more wide, and gulped down one of Azathoth's flutists. Not the flute, not the sheet music, the entire flutist. Silence, not mortal silence. No cricket gaps, no awkward pauses. Silence like the punctuation mark at the end of reality. The kind of silence that means even space-time has lost its nerve. Then the sound that has never been heard, because if it were truly heard, nothing would follow. Azathoth stirred, just a twitch, but enough. Galaxies bent sideways like wet paper. Nebulae turned inside out. A mortal somewhere sneezed and collapsed into folklore. And in the middle of all this, Chestopher sat down, proudly, lid wagging, eyes bright. The kind of wagging that means, did you see me? I did something amazing. Are you proud? I had perhaps minutes to prevent the end of the multiverse because my pet mimic had an insatiable appetite. If I scolded him, he'd panic. And if he panicked, he'd gulp down another flutist. And then existence itself would be reduced to a half-remembered hum. Very good, I croaked, with the dignity of a god forced to coo at a toddler chewing dynamite. Excellent initiative, Chestopher. First-rate swallowing technique. He wagged harder. Ink drooled. The universe cracked. Now, I said with the strained cheer of an HR manager on fire, drop it. Good boy. Leave the nice eldritch musician alone. Spit, just like we practiced. Inside him, the flutist squawked. The muffled flute shrieked through dimensional membranes like a piccolo being tortured by a trombone. The music was wrong, jagged, unfinished. Azathoth shifted again. A tremor rolled through the painted stars above us. My croissants sagged in the fire. Chestopher! I crouched low, voice sweet, mandible smiling the way mouths should never smile. You are the best mimic in the multiverse. You are loyal, dedicated, and... oh heavens, I can't believe I'm saying this. Loved. But if you do not disgorge that flutist this instant, the only thing left to wag at will be an infinite void of teeth. He blinked both eyes asynchronously, the mimic equivalent of I hear you. But what if I don't? Another twitch from Azathoth. Galaxies squealed. Somewhere in Camelot I was certain Sleepnora's tent collapsed under the sudden weight of irony. I lowered my voice further. Chestopher, look at me. He looked. All auxiliary eyes locked on mine, desperate for approval. It was unbearable. He didn't want food. He wanted me to notice him, and for that, he had chosen the most catastrophic prop in all creation. Yes, good boy. Excellent focus. You have my attention. I reached forward, patting his lid like he was the most precious archive instead of a walking black hole. Now return the musician. Drop. Out. Gently. He burbled affectionately and swallowed again. For a moment I was certain he'd gulp down the entire orchestra. I kept telling myself this was just procedure. Another breach. Another mess to file. But then the faces come. Too many. Too fast. Laughter. Arguments. The quiet moments I pretended not to notice. All of it flooding back as if the multiverse wants me to feel. And in that rush, I understood something I never intended to confess. I do not want to die. Not because death frightens me, entropy is old company, but because for once I've gathered too much to lose. Which is, of course, the cruelest realization of all. To discover life has become inconveniently worth keeping, right as it threatens to slip. Then, with the ungainly sound of a drain unclogging, he coughed. The flutist tumbled free, ink-soaked, inverted, and missing what appeared to be 3 fundamental bones, but alive. He pressed the flute to his lips and played. Badly. Very badly. The kind of badly that should be punished by exile, except in this case, The cosmos accepted it as mercy. The music resumed, sour and bent, and Azathoth's twitch slowed back into stupor. Stars refolded, planets resumed. Silence backed away, ashamed of itself, and Chestopher, he wagged, pleased, waiting for me to confirm that yes, he was a good boy. And yes, the ultimate apocalypse was less important than his need for attention. Excellent work, I said through gritted teeth. All my tentacles bristled and coiled. Top marks. I shall of course write a glowing review of your initiative on your intern file. I stood there, dripping with ink and humiliation. Croissant reduced to charcoal, multiverse forever half an OT off key, and thought, this is what eternity has become. Not triumph, not terror, but positive reinforcement training. Somewhere deep in the cosmos. Azathoth sighed back into slumber, and Chestopher, tongue lolling, leaned against me with the weight of a small moon. I patted him once, twice, because the alternative was ruin. Good boy, I said, voice flat with doom. Very good boy, and I'm never taking you camping again. He wagged. Of course he wagged.